So let's return to our top story of the day now. There's global calls for de-escalation after a top Iranian general was killed in a U.S. airstrike this morning. Both American allies and rivals alike, including some permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, are warning of a dangerous escalation in a volatile region. The executive director of the Afro-Middle East Centre, Jeenah, joins me now via phone line. Thanks so much for your time on The Full View tonight. What would you say are the top potential repercussions of another war in that Gulf region?
Well, I don't think we're going to see another war as such. I think that the speculation about a third world war, etc., are quite exaggerated. Look, the Iranians have to respond. There's no way they can ignore this. Qasem Suleimani was a very important part of the Iranian power structure. He was very important in terms of Iran's power projection in the region. So there will have to be a response. But Iran is not going to get into a conventional war with the United States, and there's not going to be American troops trying to get into Iran, I don't think. Mm-hmm. What the Iranians will do is carefully select a few targets, most likely in Iraq or Syria, attack those targets with the objective of sending a clear message to the Americans that they're not pushovers and that they have taken revenge for Suleimani's death, but select targets that can ensure that there's no American tit-for-tat thereafter.
Yeah, so when we talk about these tensions and the escalations of it, we always look at it sometimes from quite far away. I just want to find out what potential ramifications there could be for South Africa and the rest of our continent.
Well, for South Africa, I mean, the obvious and immediate possibility is, of course, that the price of our petrol will go up. Immediately after the assassination, the price of oil spiked for a little while. And if there's going to be anything close to a war or attacks back and forth, etc., that could increase. Iraq is the second largest producer of oil in OPEC, and there's a good chance that if there is an escalation, it'll take place in Iraq, not in the United States and not in Iran. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the first ones, of course. The other is that for the African continent, there's also the issue of Yemen possibly featuring in any attack or retaliation by the Iranians and continued fighting. Yemen, of course, the Americans are not there on the ground. It's an American ally, very close American ally, Saudi Arabia, which is there, and the Americans are providing arms to Saudi Arabia, etc. If, as a result of the assassination, if things escalate in Yemen, we could see something that we've already seen as the situation in Yemen gets worse, which is migration from Yemen refugees coming across a very narrow strait onto the African continent. And this has already been an issue for countries along the East Coast, Somalia, Djibouti, etc., with the refugees and having to deal with that. So that's the other thing. And finally, that particularly in North Africa, you might have a situation. If, for example, Iran decides to target, let's say, Saudi Arabia as an American ally, in North Africa, Egypt is a close friend of Saudi Arabia and might therefore get involved in some kind of way. Other countries in North Africa might be forced to take sides in one way or another, and so we see a kind of spillover taking place on the African continent.
Naeem, this is news that's just coming in 2 minutes ago, saying that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has resumed business on the floor of the Senate. He opened those remarks by saying, this morning Iran's master terrorist is dead. The architect and chief engineer of the world's most active state sponsor of terrorism has been removed from the battlefield at the hands of the U.S. military. Is that the kind of rhetoric that would de-escalate these tensions that the UN and allies and both enemies are calling for?
No, absolutely not. I mean, in fact, Pompeo's comments and McConnell's comments now are really hyping up the rhetoric. They're escalating rather than attempting to de-escalate. Perhaps the only one that's really in his rhetoric is indicating some attempt at de-escalation is Trump, very oddly, because he hasn't been tweeting much. But that's not, and you will see even stronger rhetoric, of course, from the Iranian side. They are the ones who have been aggrieved, and we already saw that kind of rhetoric today. The Supreme Leader Khamenei talking about harsh revenge. One of his advisors, Ali Akbar Velayati, who was the Speaker of Parliament, now his advisor, talked about how Americans will not be safe anywhere in the Middle East, etc. So the rhetoric is hyping up. The question, of course, is whether the action will match the rhetoric. If it does, we're in big trouble. But somehow I don't think that will be the case.
Thanks so much for your time on The Full View this evening.